Eggs, the podcast, featuring the best and brightest minds in business leadership, entrepreneurship, and technology. Today, we are thrilled to have influential entrepreneur Brad Sugars. Brad is the best-selling author, keynote speaker, and business coach. Over his career as an entrepreneur, he's been the CEO of more than 9 companies and is now the owner of multi-million-dollar franchise ActionCOACH. On today's show, we'll explore Brad's vast expertise as it pertains to investing, business, and life, and talk to him about his new program, 90 Days to Revolutionize Your Life. We'll discuss his guiding principles for business success, the catalyst to create his 30X programs, and his expertise in business leadership, franchising, and generating wealth. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Brad Sugars. Hey, Brad, how are you, man?
G'day. How you doing?
Doing very well. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate you.
I appreciate all the education you guys keep putting out there to the marketplace, so that's a good thing.
Well, thanks so much. And we do it through people like you who are willing to come on and share their stories and their wisdom. So much appreciated. A mutual back and forth here. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the beginning. So obviously you have a really long entrepreneurial journey, as we sort of alluded to there in the intro.
I must be that old. See, that's what it is. I'm just old.
But I simply couldn't imagine, packing it all into an introduction. So let's talk a little bit about sort of your entrepreneurial journey, how you got started, and maybe take us through some of the highs and the lows.
I do joke about the fact that my dad loves embarrassing me with the story of how at age 7 he caught me selling my Christmas presents to my brothers, and he said that was my first ever business. But apparently the story goes, as Dad tells it, by 8 I'd learned to rent them to them rather than actually sell it to them. So I got the presents back and their money. So, but I trained as an accountant. I worked different jobs. I worked as a DJ and all that stuff going through college. When I got into business for myself, and now I've had major shareholdings in more than 50 companies. And today I'm the chairman of 11 companies that I own major shares in, or the entire thing. And really, I guess the passion through all of it has been the learning and teaching. So from right back in the early days with my pizza company to today, commercial cleaning, restaurants, catering, ActionCOACH, which is what I'm most well known for, writing, what's that one above my shoulder there? That's book number 17, book number 18, Raise Your Hand Marketing, middle of writing book number 19 with Jeffrey Gitomer. So yeah, I guess teaching and all of that, and that's why I guess my companies have succeeded, because I teach my people. I've firm philosophy, if I keep building my people, they keep building my companies. So
yeah, no, it's an interesting take, because you hear a lot of people talk all the time about, business fundamentals and building companies and scaling a business and growing a business, but I haven't really heard that many people lead with sort of the idea of education being the thing. And, I mean, of course, we've had people talk about training and things like that, but as a core philosophy, that sounds like sort of a new direction. Where does that come from? You mentioned being sort of entrepreneurial as a young person, but I mean, did you have a person in your life who was, gave you a role model, or did that just come naturally?
A whole bunch, I guess. I mean, when I go back to 16 years of age, I was lucky enough when I was in high school to win the Rotary Youth Leadership Award. And that sent me away for a week-long training on how to be a leader and how to be a successful type thing. And that led me to reading and, from how to win friends and influence people. And then I met Jim Rohn. I was 16. I paid to go and see Jim Rohn in a seminar in the Brisbane City Town Hall, Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, where I was raised. And, my mom and dad thought I was crazy spending that much money on seeing some guy speak for the day. But I got Mr. Rohn to sign my notes, and 3 things he said to me that day stuck with me forever. He said, never wish your life were easier, wish that you were better. And, as a 16-year-old, that's a big thing to actually realize, hang on, I can't just hope it gets better. I got to get better. It's the same as like today I teach, business will never get easier. You got to get better at business. Sales will never get easier. You got to get better at sales. I have 5 kids. I teach them the same philosophy. It's like, you can set any goal in the world you want to if you're willing to grow into it. If you're unwilling to grow, then don't set a goal. If you're unwilling to learn, if you're unwilling to get better at it, then don't set a goal. It's just not going to happen. Second thing Mr. Rohn said was work harder on yourself than you do on your job. So, and I ran down to him at the end of the seminar. I got him to sign my notes, 16 years old. And I said, Mr. Rohn, what's one thing I can do as a 16-year-old boy to guarantee I'll be successful? And he said to me, son, it's real simple. Read a book a week for the rest of your life. So I did. And keep writing them, keep reading them, teaching. And I think the great thing about writing books is it makes you think about how you do things. Like when I look at how we do marketing today, that's why I wrote that book there. When I, this one here, Billionaire in Training, when I wrote Billionaire in Training, it was, how does wealth happen? Most people don't understand how wealth happens. So I had to do that. But 31 years old, I got to be the opening guy for Jim Rohn, Sydney Convention Center, 5,000 people. I was the opening guy. I showed Mr. Rohn my notes, and he said, "Please call me Jim." I said, "Yes, Mr. Rohn." Some people earn that right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, no, Mr. Rohn is amazing, obviously, and his name comes up quite a bit on this. And so, but one thing that stood out to me specifically about your story is that, that impactful moment as a young person, right? I have something similar, which is, I actually didn't know for the longest time who this was attributed to, but I had met with a guy who was trying to help me improve my sales game as like an 18-year-old. I was trying to put on a softball tournament in town, and I was trying to get sponsors to give us money. And I met with this guy, and he wasn't going to give me any money, but he was willing to share some knowledge. And he had this idea that, in order to be great at sales or great at anything, people need to know you, like you, trust you. And, there's a longer phrase or a longer sentence that goes with that. But those three core things have stuck with me my entire life, business, career, everything. And it wasn't actually until during COVID that I discovered that could be attributed to Bob Berg, who's famous for the Go-Giver movement.
Yep.
And I believe he will take no credit for it and say, he picked it up from somewhere else too. But the way that it was relayed to me came from him. And I actually, reached out to him via LinkedIn, and he actually responded back. So, I didn't get my notes signed, but nonetheless, he was willing to write back a personal email and thank me for attributing everything to him over the last 20 years or 30 years. So it's pretty cool how just that one little moment can be so impactful for a young person.
I think that we've all got to realize that the old sliding doors philosophy, it doesn't matter where you impact. That's why, 10 years ago, I started my foundation to educate young people how to be entrepreneurs, because I don't think we need more employees. I think we need more employers, and if we can, I know for me, when I left school, and more particularly when I left college, everyone says, you got to go and get a job. You got to apply for jobs. You got to do all that stuff. And in my head, that didn't make any sense to me. I didn't like working for other people. I didn't appreciate that. And I really wish someone had told me at that age that, hey, you don't actually have to leave school and get a job. You can leave school and start your own business, do whatever you want to do. And so that's, I guess, what our foundation does today. We give free education to young people that don't want to go and get a job.
And I think that is super powerful. It's the kind of thing that I always tell my kids, if ever they're slacking on their grades or whatever, I'm like, we don't need more people, to do the work. We need people to run the companies. So you guys have got to hulk up, because you guys are going to be the ones that are the future business leaders, right? You're going to be the ones that people work for down the road, because you're always going to have a selection of people who are just not interested, and they're just going to coast. And those people need a place to work. So you're going to have to put something together.
Yeah, so, Dad said it to me as you can get paid to work from the neck up or the neck down. Neck up pays more. So,
No, I love that. No, I think it's really important, especially, this idea of passing stuff along in your youth. But I also would say that, there's some value in picking this up even as an older person. I think, to your point about college, a lot of people do go through the motions, right? I mean, and now there's all these stories in the news that, the whole school system was really built to industrialize people and move them into the workplace and, all this stuff. And for many of us, that's how it goes, right? We go through school, we go through high school, we get a job, we go to college, we start a family. We just, we've got these predictable check boxes. And, but I know so many people who about 35, 40 years old, they start thinking, you know what, I'm not doing what I want to do, right? I mean, I'm doing the thing I went to school for, but I'm not doing the thing I want to do. And so some of this business knowledge and things like this that you were lucky enough to pick up from, like, maybe the best guy you could pick it up from at 16, not everybody had that. So what do you think about people who are trying to maybe turn that corner or pivot now? Like, where do they go for this kind of knowledge?
I mean, there's three great ways for learning today. Number one is you and me do these things called podcasts. There's a million YouTubes out there. So if you really want to get started, there's so much free education online today that it's crazy not to get involved in that free education. I think the second thing is, if you don't have a library card, there's bookstores, there's library cards, there's Audible. Jim Rohn used to say, no one can do your reading for you. Well, Mr. Rohn didn't know about Audible. But there's so much knowledge in books out there, and you've just got to put the time and energy in. As I said to my kids, and as I teach very clearly, I remember at 16 years old, after seeing Mr. Rohn and a few other people that I'd learned from, setting the goal of financially retiring at age 25. And I remember telling my buddy Leon, and Leon told his dad, and Leon's dad decided to sit us both down and tell us how that couldn't happen. And, and he was obviously a financial expert. He was an engineer for the city. But
well, the money just keeps coming no matter what I do. There's just more money.
Technically, Leon's dad was correct. 16-year-old version of me couldn't retire. But what Leon's dad didn't understand is that I was willing to grow into that person. And I don't care what age you stumble across the yearn to learn or the understanding that learning comes before earning type thing. I don't care what age you stumble into that. The fact is that if you want more, you have to become more. There's no way to achieve anything without changing how you think, how you look at things, how you approach things. So you have to get better at whatever it is. I still remember I coach with 5 kids. I've coached dang every sport there is almost. But remember my eldest daughter was playing soccer, and I was teaching these kids to do laces kicks. Most kids kick with the pointed toe or the inside of the foot. I'm teaching them to kick with the top of their foot. And I send them to the fence with their ball and say, all right, do 100 of those and come back and tell me what you learned. One kid comes back after 5. Coach, I can't do that. Really? How many did you do? 5. All right, go and do 95 more and tell me if you got better. Amazingly enough, after 95 more, she got better. I had a guy talk to me the other week, right, and says, I'm no good at sales. Really? How many sales training programs you been on? Oh, none. How many books on sales you read? How many podcasts on sales? How many, you know what I mean? I ask him all the questions. And of course, he's read none, done none. How did you learn you were bad at sales? Oh, I tried it a few times when I was young and I couldn't do it. So you had no training and you tried it and you were bad at it. Wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
So I honestly think, buddy, that the desire to learn must precede the desire to succeed.
Yeah. And isn't it so funny too? It's just as you're telling that story, I'm thinking of my own kid. He decided, so we went out to Nashville for spring break this year and went to a Nashville Predators hockey game.
Uh-huh.
And kid had a blast. It was super cool. They actually beat your Vegas Knights, so sorry about that. But it was a lot of fun. Kid had a blast, and now has decided, after never playing hockey in his entire life, that now is the time. So he's 12, and we just started skating lessons yesterday. So it's funny that we're talking about this. But he's one of those kids that has always had that kind of attitude. If I'm not good at it already, there's no point. Right. So he goes into sports, he's kind of a bigger kid. So he played football and it came sort of naturally to him. But, the whole concept is he would be very disappointed if he wasn't already good.
Mm.
And we tried to tell him before we get into this, we're like, okay, this is totally foreign to you. You've never skied, you've never roller skated, you've never done anything where you had to stand on your ankles and balance on a blade and do this. Be prepared to fall. And he actually did fall a lot. And, in fact, really had a hard time even just staying on his feet. But he did afterwards, recognize the challenge and go easy on himself, that he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that it was okay to try and fail. And, and I really worried when I put him in there because he was with all these young kids and stuff. This is like a first time on skates kind of class, right? And so, but it made me think of times in my life where we spend so much time trying to compare ourselves to people who are already ahead of us.
Yeah.
And people who are, several steps ahead. So it makes us look really bad. So to your point about sales, if you've done no training, you've done no things, there's no expectation you would be good. If you're good, you must be some kind of prodigy or something. So because
the whole born salesperson doesn't exist,
Right. Yeah. And I think that's it. Right. And I think people will take, charisma or whatever and attribute that to being good in sales. But there's certainly methodologies and things that you could learn to be better. Right. So I think it's really interesting. One thing I wanted to dig into though, on that topic is any advice on finding people who are legitimate, especially nowadays, with social media and all this stuff, TikTok, this is where people learn or they get fed something. I don't know if learning is, but there's so many people.
I do get annoyed sometimes, Ryan, when I sit there and I listen to some of this, you got to hustle and grind. And, all this. I very clearly think hustle and grind is the new stupid. It's like, come on, guys, let's actually teach what it is and how it works. And I think, for me, if I didn't keep buying or starting new companies, I think I wouldn't have my learning at the level it is either. And I think it's easy to trade on knowledge you gained 10 years ago and stuff like that. But, social media is an entirely different animal today. The way you do marketing today is entirely different to 12 months ago. The stuff we did 12 months ago still is not working today. The way we sell today, the way we present webinars, the way we do things is entirely different. I think the biggest way to find someone is not find someone who is telling you what to do, but is showing you what they do. Here's what we do. Here's how I do it in this business. Here's my catering company. Here's our website. This is how we build the website. This is what we do with it. And this is why it works. Here's how we run YouTube ads here's how we do our videos on our catering business so that these videos actually get plays. Here's the video we did with 1 million views on TikTok. Let me show you how it worked and why it worked. Does that make sense? It's like, I'm not showing you what to do. I'm showing you what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching based on what I do rather than what I theorize.
Well, and I think there's something to that, right? I mean, like in my college experience, for example, I did, a traditional 4-year degree like everybody else does, but there was 1 year in the middle where I was like, you know what? I don't know if I like this very much. And I went up and I did vocational school in the middle, right? So I went up and I did 1 year in Votech, and it was still the same subject matter. It was still marketing and management, but it was like a 2-year program instead of a 4-year program. But in the 1 year of applied tech that I did, I learned more than I learned in 4 years of traditional education, right? Because it's hands-on. So to your point, it's, actually practicing the thing and doing the thing and learning how to do the thing, and it is gleaning knowledge off of people. It's not theoretical, right? And so...
Yeah, now I have to take a debate though. The traditional 4-year college degree, some of us do take a little longer than 4 years.
Well,
some of us took that 5th year.
I started in 98 and I just finished in 22. So I can tell you that. So now granted, I only had 18 credits left when I walked away. And luckily I just got busy enough in my business that I just left school and went to work. Yeah. But during COVID, I had a little extra time and I was thinking about maybe pursuing a master's because I've always felt sort of weak in business kind of skills. Yeah. Like I run a marketing company, but I'm a designer by trade, right? So my background is in art and design, not in business management and all that kind of stuff. So scaling a business and stuff like that has always been murder for me. So I thought, hey, you know what? I'll go back to school, I'll get a master's, but I don't want to start a program over somewhere. So I'll go finish mine. So I finally was able to do school online or whatever and get it finished up. So I finally finished, but I'm like a 12-year bachelor's. So, but hey, it's done, right? So the whole thing is I checked the box, I got it finished. So anyway, but I wonder, to the idea of gaining education and sort of sussing out people who are good and people who are not. I mean, I think you're right. Obviously, if you can get exposure to people who are doing the thing you want to do, that's going to be ideal. So maybe to your point about YouTube and other places like that, find people who have expertise in your subject matter. But I mean, how would you advise somebody who's maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit older, thinking about taking a pivot and starting a business? Like, it seems to me that it would be easier for a young person to find sort of a mentor or somebody to guide them than it would be for an older person. But maybe that's just me playing a stereotype out too. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be. One of the things that I know when we started ActionCOACH, I found that business owners, and business ownership is one of the loneliest jobs in the world. Let's be blunt about that fact. Actually, when I first started in business and I started looking at, okay, here I am, I'm struggling with something. Who do I turn to for advice? Like, do you turn to your banker? No, you want to hide stuff from your banker. You don't want to actually tell them the truth. Where do you go for that? And I think community is a big part of what we do at ActionCOACH. We bring business owners together, whether they're brand new or whether they've been around business for a long time. I think it's important to get with a community of other business owners and whether you're in sales or business or whatever it is, but getting with a community definitely helps. Find your tribe and find people to learn with. But also, I guess we started the whole business coaching industry or the whole profession of it because what's ActionCOACH will be 30 years old come this August. And we have just over 1,100 offices now in 83 countries coaching business owners. And the vast majority of our clients are the gray-haired no-heads. because of two things. One is, I've been running this business 15 years and I want to sell it at some point. Or I've been running it for 15 years and I feel like I work harder today than I did before and I'm not making as much, or that sort of thing. So a lot of that philosophy of I want to finish this thing, I want to get it done. Like my definition of a business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. If you got to be there, it's not a business, and you work for an idiot. So it's that whole philosophy of when I realized early on, because I remember when I was first young in business, I actually thought hustle and grind was the smart way to do it. Right? I thought that as the owner, I had to be the hardest working person in the room. And it wasn't until later when I actually learned that me working that hard covered up the mistakes of my team or covered up the mistakes of the business. The fact that I did all of that work meant that the salespeople had to do less. The fact that I worked so hard in creating marketing that the marketing team really didn't have to do as much. And so my hustle and grind actually covered up a lot of those problems and prevented me from creating a business. They allowed me to create a job where I couldn't leave. And when I got to a point of being almost burned out, I said, this is just crazy. There's got to be a better way of doing this thing. And so that's where a lot of the study and the learning came from, as to do all that. But I when I turned 50, middle of COVID, I bought myself a present. I built myself a TV studio because I thought, where am I going to teach all my stuff? Because I've written in books, and I thought, you know what? So I built myself a TV studio that I could have one person run it. So I could two of us would be in there. Like we could both take our tests and we'd be fine, we'll lock myself in there. So
just a big red button on the wall to start everything.
Yeah, basically. So for 30 days in a row, I filmed everything I knew about business. And so we cut it to half an hour a day for 30 days. And then when I finished the business, I thought, you know what, I should teach about wealth. And so I spent 30 more days, like I went and wrote it and then came back and we did 30 more days teaching wealth. And then I thought, well, what about success principles? So I did 30 days on life. And so 90 days of training. And I thought, thank goodness I've got it down now. This is, I've actually recorded it and it's there for posterity for everyone to go and learn from. And so, yeah,
well, it's really important, or I think really valuable that you did, sort of take that separation, right? Because I think the old school mentality or the old school approach to business was more like you're talking about, that hustle and grind attitude, right? Like so much of early knowledge that I can think of, and even some of my sort of, I guess, closest thing you might call to an early business mentor or leader. He was just the hardest working guy in show business, right?
Yeah.
He slept at the office half the time.
I used to brag about sleeping at my office.
Yeah, it used to be like a thing, right? And I was the same way. I used to work for, in agency for, from 7 till 6 in the afternoon, and then I'd come home and work on my business 7 to 2. So I was killing myself and I did that for 5 or 6 years on top of all the other years of late night agency work and stuff like that. And it's just, there was a little bit of pride, and it sounds like you're familiar with this, but like in the agency business in particular, being the last guy out, being the guy that stayed over, being the guy that, did whatever, accomplished this Herculean feat without thinking about how it's going to affect you or your day or your family or whatever. Yeah. Like there was a little bit of a badge of honor, and that was sort of the culture in agency for a long time. Yeah. And, but it does seem like the tides have turned a little bit and people are starting to look more for that balance. Yeah. But what's interesting about it is I don't think a lot of people have that knowledge or that training. Right. Yeah. If you went to school for business, you learned how to run a business. You didn't learn how to be a good father or how to balance time with your family or, take time for yourself even. And, that's just not the kind of thing that came up. And then even as it pertains to money, like you might learn how to run the books for your business, but like most people don't get into wealth or any of that stuff. And as a young person, I know I didn't receive any education on like financial management or how to balance a checkbook or, much beyond that in school. And so like many people probably in my age group, there was a lot of wasted money and bad decisions and credit card debt and all the other things, right? And so it's like knowledge like what you're talking about is stuff that I wish I'd had. Yeah. And, and I look at my kids now and I think, they have even less of a relationship with cash than I did, right? Because it just doesn't exist anymore. And so it's like,
yes,
everything is plastic. Everything is just, you tap it and it's paid for. And there's no real relationship to money. And I found that my kids are having a hard time, even balancing their little, $60 at a time checkbooks. And so it's like, So I think that knowledge is really important, and I like that you recognized it. So I wonder if we couldn't maybe dig into that a little bit and talk about wealth generation and maybe even more importantly, wealth preservation.
Firstly, let's define wealth, or I'll give you my definition of wealth. I learned this many years ago from Buckminster Fuller. He said, wealth is the ability to live a number of days forward at your current lifestyle if you didn't have to work. So if you had to stop working today, how many days forward can you live at current lifestyle on current savings, investments? What does that look like? And, when I first learned that, of course, my number was 0. Well, actually, I think my number was negative. I probably had 2 months credit card bills still to pay, and that sort of thing. And if you look at the average person today, their number is negative. They do have, they're using this month's paycheck to pay last month's credit card, and therefore their number is actually in a reverse situation. So your goal with wealth is to create money that comes in whether you get out of bed or not. Your goal is to get paid while you sleep. Like, people say, why do you write so much? Well, with 18 books out there in the market, approximately every 3 minutes somewhere in the world, someone buys one of my books. So you think about that, you go to bed, you wake up, you got more money than you went to bed with. Why do I invest in real estate? Because on the first of the month, every single month, whether I'm playing golf, fishing, beach with the kids, or working, still get money, and that, I think the first goal with money is to learn to make a lot. The second goal is to make more from your investments than you do from your actual job or your business type thing. And then your third job is to learn how to manage that. So you got to make money and you got to manage money. They're the two real phases to money. Making it, though, and this is where a lot of people, I'll use an example. I was chatting with my daughter. She's 21. She's over in Italy studying how to be a photographer and business and stuff. And I said, well, so what are you thinking, kid? Where you want to head with life at this stage? She said, you know what? I want to travel a lot. So fantastic. How are you going to fund that? Because dad ain't funding that. It's the old, well, we're rich. No, we aren't rich. I'm rich. You're not. Okay. And she said, I'm thinking of graphic design. And I said, well, his problem with that is you're still just trading time for dollars. What could you use your skills for that you can go and build a business that sells things? And no matter where you are in the world, what could you do? Could you build an Amazon dropship business? Absolutely, you could do that. Could you build a business selling a singular product that you build the website, manage the website, and you have all the products drop shipped from a manufacturer somewhere in the world, sort of thing? How can you do those sorts of things and at least get her thinking of creating income that's not tied to the number of hours? So there's step one for her, is getting her to think, don't worry about trading time for dollars, trade skill for dollars, and be good with that. So she's off thinking about that. And then once you've got good at doing that, and people go into investing way too fast, Ryan. They want to be an investor before they've learned how to make $1 million a year. Listen, if you're making $100,000 a year, don't study investing. It's a waste of time, because by the time you pay all your bills and your taxes and your mortgage and everything, you might have $5,000 or $10,000 a year left over to invest. Don't even consider investing until you're making $500,000 a year. Plow that money back into making more money, build a bigger business, or build your knowledge base, or do something. And once you're making $1 million a year, then you got $500 a year in spare free cash flow to invest. Now learn how to invest. Yes, definitely don't waste that money. Put it into it doesn't really matter where you put it at that point. You can just put it into an inactive investment like real estate. Because if you want to talk wealth creation, right, real estate is business is the number one format for wealth creation on the planet. All of the richest people in the world created their wealth through business. And people were like, well, you look at the richest guy in the world. Yeah, he owns all of the fashion brands. They're businesses. He didn't go and buy shares. He didn't go and buy NFTs. He didn't go and buy real estate portfolios. No, he built his wealth through business. Because why? The value of a business is determined by the profitability. If you're smart, you can learn sales, you can learn marketing, you can learn product, you can learn all of these things. you can increase the profitability. Let's say, Ryan, you and I went out tomorrow, right, based on your knowledge in the marketing world, my knowledge of business, and we bought a restaurant that was running pretty dang average, right? It was making just enough money to keep its head above water. If you and I, with our knowledge, we could walk into that restaurant, could we increase profitability over 12 months? Could we probably double or triple the profitability over 12 months? Absolutely, we could. So what did we just do to the value of it? We doubled or tripled the value of it. So when I teach how to buy and sell companies, I see all these people teach, flipping houses. Flipping houses is good, but flipping businesses is actually great. Because if I can't tenfold the value of a piece of real estate, but I can tenfold the value of a thing. You look at, what does Warren Buffett do? One of the richest people in the world, what's he do? He buys broken companies and fixes them. I remember when he bought NetJets, who manages the jets first. He walks in and buys NetJets. It's losing $50 million a year. He turns around, it's making $900 million a year. Do you think he made a few dollars in extra capital value right there? Yes. But real estate's second best. I'll tell you why real estate is second best. You can't add as much value to it. But, and this is where most people get it wrong. I even heard Dave Ramsey the other day telling people this is not real. And it's like, Dave, are you kidding me? I used to have debates with Robert Kiyosaki about this stuff because, yes, your own home is an asset, especially if you do it right, okay? It's crazy not to say that. But if I go out and buy a house tomorrow, right? Let's go and we buy a house, and let's say the house is, I don't know, we'll just say $1 million just for the ease of it's a round number. Or we could say 100 grand, right? We go and buy that house for 100 grand. How much money we got to put in? 20 grand, 20% deposit. It's what we got to put into that deal, right? So for the next 20 years, we have tenants in there who pay the mortgage for us. So 80% of the asset is paid for by someone else. So if you want 80% of your retirement paid for by someone else, you just buy a piece of real estate. If you're like, think about kids, right? Kid turns 1. I go and buy him a house. I put in 20% of the value of the house. Put it in a trust for that kid. On their 21st birthday, I give the kid the house. It's fully paid off. It's probably gone up in value. Now, even if it didn't go up in value, even if it stayed the same for 20 freaking years, which not really happening that often, even if the rent didn't go up in 20 years, I still made a 400% return on investment because someone paid for 80% of it for me. So to not do that, I still remember as a kid reading Robert G. Allen, buy 20 properties and you'll never look back for the rest of your life. You'll be rich forever. So I teach people that your job is to start a business and build that business to a point where every year it gives you a deposit for another house. If every year it gives you another deposit, then in 20 years, you've got 20 homes and you're done for the rest of time. Now, if you only want 10 homes, which most people can be very, very rich on 10 homes, then over 10 years. Now, if you want to be even more rich than that, build a business that gives you enough money to make a deposit twice a year. And if you're a genius, do it every quarter, every 90 days, buy another one. 10 years from now, you're sitting there with 40 of the dang things. It's no more. People try to make it harder than it is, right? They really do. I just see it. It's so much simpler than what most people make it out to be. Because if you got a decent house in a decent area where a decent family wants to live and rent and pay that rent, you've got your mortgage paid for the next 20 years. 20 years later, you got a house you own. Rent is coming in every month. You own it outright. You can redraw against it. You can do all sorts of different things.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that keeps people from doing this, obviously, I mean, buying into real estate is something that people talk about, right? I mean, you see this sort of content around on places like YouTube and things like that. I think some of I think that there's a couple barriers to entry that are maybe more emotional than real, but it's got something to do with fear, I believe. And sort of, general not understanding, right? They're afraid that they're going to put some money into it and then lose their money, or it's going to become a full-time job to maintain a home, or, XYZ things. So can we talk a little bit about maybe that transition or getting into that first situation? So in your case, you buy and sell a lot of businesses, you buy and sell a lot of homes. So I don't know where in your career is the best spot to maybe focus on one of these, But if you could talk about a time in your career where you made a transition where this is my first time doing X,
Yep.
and this is how you would do it now in retrospect.
Yeah, look, I go back to my first real estate investment, 17A Jenkinson Street, Indooroopilly, Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Remember the thing. It probably took me 100 hours of study and knowledge to be able to buy that house, because I didn't know what I was doing. But here's the difference between me and most people. I was willing to read, I was willing to learn, I was willing to study. Don't invest your life savings without investing hours in study. You go, you think about, right? How many years did you have to study to get into? How many years did you have to learn to be able to just get a job? Like those sorts of things where it took so long to learn, and yet people expect to be able to get into real estate investing without learning. No, read the books. I always say two things, right? If you can, and my 30X wealth program is about helping you create a wealth plan. If you're going to start wealth, let's say you're going to start your family's wealth creation. You set up either a trust or a business. Your local advisors can tell you which one. In most cases, it'll be a trust of some sort, right? And let's say I was starting a trust. I would start the Brad Sugars Investment Company. I then write a business plan. What is that company going to invest in? What are the rules of what it will and won't invest in? What's the niche? And those two words are really important, niche and rules, okay? If you don't know the niche you want to invest in, you don't know enough to invest yet. If you don't know the rules about what you will and won't invest in, you don't know enough to invest yet. Like a rule, let's use business as a rule. I will only invest in companies that have repeat business. I'm not going to invest in a pool building company because by the time I build you a pool, I then got to go and find a new customer to build the next pool. I'm going to invest in a pool cleaning company. Why? Because once I get you as a customer, how often you got to have it cleaned? Every single week. I would rather be the fluorine company than the pool cleaning company too, because the pool cleaning company, I'm trading hours for dollars. The chlorine company that makes and sells the chlorine, hey, presto, I can make and sell as long as I can press a button to make more, I can sell more. So it's learning that stops a lot of people, buddy. Fear is just lack of knowledge. How much fear would you have if I said to you, all right, we're going to go and jump out of an airplane today. And you're like, okay, are we going to do any lessons? Nope, no lessons. We're just going to jump. What do you mean? Well, there's your parachute over there. Go pack it up for me. Can you teach me how to pack it? Nope. No, I'm not going to teach you how to pack it. You just got to pack that thing up. We're going to go on the plane in 5 minutes and jump. Like, how much fear do you have at that point in time versus, all right, we're going to go over here. We're going to watch these professionals that have all done 30,000 jumps pack the chute. They're going to pack their chute. They're going to pack your chute. You can pick the two chutes they pack. You can pick which one you want to use. It doesn't matter because they're going to jump with the other one before you. So they trust their own life to what they're packing. Then we're going to go over here and we're going to spend 8 hours learning the theoretics of jumping out of a plane. Then I'm going to tie you to one of these other people who's going to jump with you. So do you know what I mean? Education reduces fear. Education reduces mistakes. It's that lack of willing to learn. See, the hardest work in business, the hardest work in wealth, the hardest work in success is the learning work. It's not the doing work. The doing is relatively easy. In business, the doing work is, okay, do X, do Y, do Z, and do it over again tomorrow. Do X, do Y, do Z, do it over again tomorrow. Wealth, go look at some real estate. Go and knock on doors. Go and do your thing. The doing work's pretty easy. The knowledge acquisition and the emotional depth. Down in Auckland, New Zealand, years ago, I was teaching real estate down there, and he was a young man then, and he'll tell you he's not as young as he was back then. His name is Ron Hoi Fong. And Ronnie then went on to teach the strategy that I used, which was buy a 2-bedroom apartment that had a large living space, usually had some form of a formal dining area, because in the 90s, those sort of things existed. Turn it into a 3-bedroom 2-bath. So you buy a 2-bed, 2-bath, turn it into a 3-bed, 2-bath, because you don't even need planning to put up a set of walls to just create another bedroom. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that simply enough? So in Auckland, New Zealand, we did the math and we worked out in those days a $200,000 2-bed, 2-bath. Once you put a 3rd bed on, became a $280,000 value. Does that make sense? It's like the value just jumped because of the 3rd bedroom, right? That strategy, I went down there for Christmas a few years back when Ron and all of his students together had bought $1 billion worth of real estate using that strategy in Auckland, New Zealand. They're now just under $2 billion in total real estate, all of the students of Ron's at Renovations in Auckland, New Zealand. But you sit down and you start thinking about how simple it is. But what I love about what Ron does is he holds someone's hand. See, if you want to learn real estate, go join the local real estate investors club and ask one of the guys or gals that has 20 properties to say, hey, would you mind coming with me? Or would you mind if I just came with you and watched and listened? And do that for 12 months. People are just not willing to put in the time and energy. What if I said to someone, all right, for 12 months, you can come around with me. And every time I buy a property, I don't do it anymore. People do it for me. But if back when I was buying them, if you came with me every single time and took a look at it, I was just in my buddy's office. He employed his young nephew. His young nephew goes out and buys the real estate for him because he showed his nephew. Now the nephew's also buying them for himself. But there's millions of people out there willing to help you. You just got to go and join the groups, join these associations, become a part of it. And that's where, for us, business is what we do. And I just love watching people succeed. And I think that if you really want to get good at business or real estate or whatever it is, just find someone that's in one of the local clubs and go hang with them. I used to pay realtors to drive me around. Right? When I wanted to learn a new area that I was trying to invest in, I would go to the top real estate agency in that area, and I'd ask the person on the front desk, hey, who's the number one salesperson for investors here? Not residential, but who's the one that sells most to investors here? And they would always point it out. And I would then say to that person, hey, listen, I'd like to pay you a couple $100 to drive me around, teach me the area. And that's absolutely, let me take you and drive you around. At the end of the day, I go to give them a couple $100 and they say, I don't want your money.
Yeah.
No,
I love that. Well, and I love the idea too of just taking that a little extra step, right? And thinking a little bit creatively. I wanted to layer on just one more thought about the fear thing, because I think the opposite side of the fear is not so much the fear of learning, but the fear of doing. And you've heard the phrase, the analysis paralysis or whatever, but like I'm notoriously one of these guys in some capacities. It's really funny, the many facets of my life that I run into. But I've been
you do lay it bare on a lot of the podcasts.
Well, I'm trying, right? I mean, because I want to be relatable, right? I want people to understand that these are the struggles that so many people go through, right? And so for me, when I was young, I did a lot of art and I was very artistic, and then I became a commercial artist and I moved into the computer and I gave up on things that were physical. And now as an older person, I want to do more of that stuff, right? So I've been thinking about getting back into drawing and painting and doing all this stuff, right? Well, what I've found is that I've become the guy who just buys art supplies, but never actually creates art. And so I go out every week, I go down to the art shop, I buy new cans of paint, I buy new brushes, I buy easels, I buy, canvases, whatever. But I've not once sat down to actually concept out a piece to paint. And I think that thing is something that people do, where you might get caught up reading all the real estate investment books from all the the billionaire du jours, and then you still can't get started, right? You still can't push out, and I mean, we've had other people talk about real estate investing and other types of investing here on the show. And, as soon as we're done, me and Michael sit and BS, and we'll be like, man, we got to go. Let's start buying up, let's get some land. Let's do this land swap thing. Let's, whatever it is. And, but then we just never do it. Right. So some of it isn't that we didn't even have it, like in this case, like we have access to your mind, right? Here you are teaching us these different things we should do. But I think it's unlikely that people will run and buy a house based on this conversation alone. Right. And
correct.
So,
but maybe they'll pick up another book on the subject.
Right. Yeah. No,
maybe
and I think
they'll
that's
read
right,
another
right?
blog. Maybe they'll because success is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Maybe today is one of the 4 corners to your jigsaw puzzle. Maybe today fills in that top line or the side lines, or maybe today is the last piece in your jigsaw to say, you know what? All right, now I'm going to go and actually do this. maybe someone calls a realtor today because of what we've said on here.
Yeah.
Not everything is a step to actual doing. Most steps are a step to making the plan, making the steps. The other thing I'll give you for this, if I looked in your calendar right now, Ryan, where does it actually have time blocked out for you to go and paint?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't
Right.
exist.
So what if right now we turn to you, and this is the coach in me, I'm as a business coach, I turn to it and I go, all right, what if we right now opened your calendar up and we blocked in 2 hours on Saturday that said, go to this thing. And we booked a person to take you there and make you do that type thing. You know, it's when you get the inspiration, you got to take some form of action, something, anything. It doesn't matter what, but something. That's why I call it Action Coach, not, hey, that was a good podcast, coach.
Well, I think that's right? Because I think it is that action step that so many people, including myself, miss out on a lot, which is, you know, I mean, I read books ad nauseum, right? But for some reason, I still don't feel like I can get my business to grow in the way I want it to. Or I'm actually right now in process of moving into sort of like a fractional CMO role with a tech company. But that means I have to make my business stand alone without me at the middle, right?
Yeah.
I built my agency as basically an extension of my freelance career. And so a lot of our clients came to work with me for me, right? They didn't come to hire the company. They came to hire me. And so, which is a gift, and it's awesome, and it's cool that I had this opportunity. But now I want to pursue this other thing, but I don't want to let down my clients. I don't want to do any of that stuff, but I have to figure out how to like extricate myself from the middle.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to now try and learn a bunch of stuff, right? And I've been reading business books. I wish I could do the book a day or whatever it was for the rest of your life.
Book a week.
So, but I do get, you know, I read every day for an hour. And so whatever that translates into books, right? So I do a ton of reading. But I feel like I have a hard time retaining and then acting on.
So I'll go to my formula. Dream, goal, learn, plan, act. So build your dreams, know what your dreams are. From your dreams, you turn them into goals. Dreams are things that are 10 to 20 years out. You have no idea how they're going to happen, if they're going to happen, possibility. It's like, that's by definition a dream. You know, a lot of people go, oh, I don't know if they can put that on my dream chart. I don't know if it'll happen. That's the point. You're not supposed to know if it's happened. That's why it's called a dream. You know, dreams got to be turned into goals. So again, with the goal, and you know, it stood the test of time. The old SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, results oriented, the time frame. But anything inside 5 years should be set with a goal. You know, when are you going to do it by, and all of those sorts of things. From the goal, you determine the learning. And that's a big step for a lot of people. They write the goal and then they go to work. No, from the goal, you got to do more learning. And that's what you just said it right there. You've set a goal of extricating yourself, and you've been reading the books to be able to do that. Most people's learning isn't as intentional as it needs to be. It's not like, okay, my goal is to run a marathon. Okay, therefore I need to study these 10 things to be able to run a marathon. My goal is to have a business that works without me. Okay, then I've got to read these things or study these specific things. From that intentional learning, we can then go to actually building a plan. So if I was to look at your artwork, if we were to sit down and do a plan for where is the art going to take you, okay? And we'd set a goal. All right, you're going to have a show. Your first showing of artwork is going to be on December 31st, end of this year. So 2023, you're going to show 12 pieces of art. There's the goal. Now we develop a plan. How do we show 12 pieces of art? Well, to show 12 pieces of art, we got to paint 30. Okay, how do we paint 30? Well, we've got 30 weeks left in the year. So I need to paint one piece per week for 30 weeks to have my show by the end of the year. How am I going to paint one piece per week? Well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. That's where the planning comes into it. And then from the plan, taking action. So like, one of the things that I love about teaching is teaching people to build a plan, whether it's a plan for their business, a plan for their life, a plan for their wealth. You got to build the plan. You know, I know for us, and people say, you know, you don't talk about money around the kitchen table. Well, that's the dumbest thing ever. If you don't talk to your kids about money, who's going to? You know, that's just crazy. You got to sit down with your kids every month and go over, here's what we're investing in as a family. Here's what we're buying. Here's what we sold. Here's why we sold it. Here's what we're doing. Give your kids the ability to actually learn from you. And I had one dad say to me after I told him that, he said, but Brad, I don't know anything about money. Good. Start reading with your kids then. Start understanding it with your kids. I wrote a book called The Wealth Coach. Specifically, it was designed for kids. And I gave it to my buddy and he says, Brad, I don't know any of this stuff. How can I get my kids learning it? So I went and rewrote the book so adults and kids could read the book and learn from it, sort of thing. Because just understanding money, if you don't understand it, money has to work for you. And for it to work for you, you got to understand it. It's like people. You want to have people working for you and you want to have money working for you. You want to have systems working for you. You want to have marketing working for you. Well, your marketing can only work for you if you understand marketing or if you hire someone who understands marketing. You can't, it won't work for you otherwise. Marketing's the greatest investment there ever was, Ryan. I don't need to convince you of that fact. But
well, and it's so funny, just as you were laying out your plan there, like I felt almost like a visceral click in my head, right? Just talking about art specifically, right? And I don't know if a show is my end goal or not, but to now, this idea of starting painting again has been kind of this ethereal, intangible thing, right? It's like, I will paint, I will paint what, I will paint where, I will paint when, whatever, just I will paint, right? And so, but it was so undefined that it's impossible to act upon, right? So to your point, I mean, how could I possibly act? Because to paint means what?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, set the easel up in your backyard and just have it sitting there, ready to go. So any point in time, you can walk out there and start painting. That's the biggest limiting factor for most people is they want to play their guitar more often, yet they've got it locked in a closet in their bedroom. And it's not sitting out on the couch in their living room. No, have it right where you are every day.
Well, and it's ironic too, because the concept of laying out a plan like what you're describing is exactly how I would approach a project for a client, for example. Right. So I don't have any trouble taking a client's project and breaking down something like that. We're going to, develop a new brand for some big company or whatever. Like, this is how we would do it. We would break it into the parts and we would do the pieces and we would deliver on deadlines and we would do all that stuff. Right. But for my own little pet project, this, ethereal or mysterious, whatever we want to call it, painting thing is, has never had that kind of logic applied to it. So it's funny that even within me as an individual, there's clearly a line drawn between what I take as my personal time or my personal things and
a lot of people
take as business.
A lot of people are very good at setting up goals for their business or their work life, but they don't set goals for their relationship. They don't set goals for their health. They don't set goals with their kids. You've got to set goals with your kids. I know for me with my kids, I must speak to every kid every day. Now, my two eldest are both away at college, but I still every day want to call them, message them, WhatsApp them, do some way of communicating with them every day of their life so they know every single day of their life their dad loves them. I just want to make sure that they know that every single day of their life. Now, I don't get it perfect. I'm not perfect. I just spent 3 days at Stagecoach Festival in Southern California with my wife. She knew I loved her. The kids probably thought, where is dad? He's MIA. Yes, dad was MIA, listening to country music, drinking beer, and having a damn good time.
No, I love that. Well, hey, we're starting to get towards the end of the show. I wanted to take a few minutes and just really focus in on your 90-day programs and your 30X programs. We touched on them a little bit earlier. You sort of explained sort of the outline and how you put it together. But will you talk a little bit about, some of the impetus behind putting it together in the first place, and then maybe how somebody might engage with it or what they could expect to learn from using the program or getting into the program?
Yeah, if you want to learn it, just go bradsugars.com. There's all the free stuff there as well. So get started on the free, then do whatever you need to do. But my theory is that if I get someone for 90 days straight, and if every day for 90 days, I could give them new knowledge on how to succeed in life, in business, and in wealth. If I could do that for someone for 90 days, if I could teach them how to build a business plan in 30 days, a life plan in 30 days, and a wealth plan in 30 days, 90 days from now, if your thinking is entirely different, then your life's going to be entirely different. I'm not saying that in 90 days I can turn around your life, because most of us have messed up long enough that it takes a little more than 90 days to clean up some of the things we've done and some of the old ways of thinking. But that's my theory, and it seems to be proving correct. Everyone that does the 30-day challenges, because we do each of them as a challenge, so 30 days straight, you get together with a group of people and you all come together and chat at lunch about what did you learn from today's video, and then you move on to the next day. And each of the 30 days is just $99. It's for me, it's not about the wealth creation from it. It's about helping people learn, but, also wanting to make sure that if they didn't put any money down, there's no pain at all. So I want people to complete it at least. But yeah, so, when you look at business, going through team building and sales and marketing, and how do you actually just learn enough to know what it looks like to be a great business owner? How do you learn enough in wealth to actually just put together a plan? And even if what you learn is, okay, here's my plan, I've still got to go and study this area of real estate, or I've got to study this area of the stock market, or I've still got to study more. A lot of the time your plan is, I got to spend a year studying, because, but at least you'll have a clear plan of what you want to study. You have a clear set of goals. When it comes to wealth, people say to me, oh, I want to be rich. Okay, define rich for me. No, I really don't. Okay, well, what would your passive income per month be? What would your net asset value be? If you were wealthy, what would that be? Give me a definition, because only once we have the goal can we actually start to set a plan in play. Only once we know exactly what it is you want. People say, well, I don't want to be working as much. Great. How many hours a week do you want to work? Like when people are running their business, working 60, 80 hours a week, and I say, well, okay, let's set a goal then. How many days a week do you actually want to have to go to work? Well, I'd like to go to work 4 days a week. Excellent. How many hours a day would you like to be there for those 4 days a week? 5 hours a day. Excellent. We now have a goal in mind that we can build a plan for. You want to be working 20 hours a week, 5 hours a day, 4 days a week. How much vacation do you want to have? Well, I'd like to be on vacation for 6 weeks of the year while my kids are on vacation from school. Excellent. Let's set that as a plan. And only then, Ryan, again, my coaches, if anyone wants a free coaching session, just go on actioncoach.com. One of my coaches will give you a free session anywhere in the world. Just mention that you're on the Eggs podcast. They'll be happy to hand over a free session. But that, my friend, is really the simplest way I can explain what I try to do with teaching.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's so important, and obviously there are a lot of programs out there and a lot of things out there, but like we talked about earlier in the show, the idea or sort of the approach where we're talking about business, but then we're also talking about what we're going to do with the expected outcome of the business, which is money, and then what we're going to do with that money, and then how we're going to do all that in combination with our life, I think is so critical, because it seems to me that most of the training that I'm familiar with, and granted I haven't seen everything, but I mean, a lot of it is how to grow your X, or how to build a Y, or, how to invest in this or whatever, but there's not a lot of focus on how these sort of three pillars of a person's life kind of interplay. And they're really critical, I mean, even just thinking in my own life, like, okay, if I was going to sit down and do this 90-day program, okay, well, I've got to get my wife to buy in on the fact that I'm going to take 30 minutes every evening and work on this, or, whatever it is. Right. And so, but
I try and have lunch with everybody every day, right? That's my goal. Let's have lunch together for the next 90 days.
I love that. And so, but it's that idea, right? That you've got to, people are going to be affected by the thing you're doing. So if I want to pursue painting, well, okay, now I'm going to miss 2 hours on Saturday because I'm going to be painting for 2 hours on Saturdays, right? So it's like, so I need buy-in from my family. I need to understand what this expense is going to be. Am I perfectly good with spending the money on it because it brings me joy, or do I hope to turn it into a business or whatever? And then, if it is a business, there's some business questions to think of, so, I mean, those three things are sort of, inextricable. Or inextricably connected. Yeah. And I think it's important to sort of look at it that way, sort of holistically. So I really appreciate what you're doing with your program. I guess here in the last couple of seconds, do you just want to let people know where they can check out all the stuff you do? I mean, obviously it's
it's everywhere. You name it. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on TikTok. I don't dance, but I definitely teach.
Well, it's not too late. It's not too late.
Look, the other thing is, if anyone wants, I will say two things to finish up. Number one, if this is your first time on this podcast, make sure you support the work these guys do. Click the button to subscribe. Only when you subscribe do you actually start getting that continued compounding growth factor. The second thing is this. If you're not reading, you're not growing. If you're not studying, you're not growing. And the more you grow, the more things come your way. So keep growing into the person you want to become, and you'll attract all the things that you want to attract.
I love that. And just as a parting shot, it's bradsugars.com, right? And
bradsugars.com or actioncoach.com, either one.
Excellent. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for taking the time to do this. This has been an awesome conversation, and I don't know if we got far enough down the road into your specifics, but I really appreciate sharing your general knowledge.
I love chatting, buddy, and we can do it again another day. We can get into specifics around all three areas, but thank you for the work you do.
Absolutely. We'll do it again. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week, and we'll see you guys next time.